Well, good afternoon. My name is Vera Andrushkiw, and I will be the moderator of this panel on Ukrainian culture. I would like to introduce all of the panelists. We have Chryzanta Hentisz from the Ukrainian Museum, Yuliya Fed from the
Ukrainian Cultural Foundation.
From Ukrainian Cultural Fund, that's right. And we have, and now we also have Iryna Prokofieva, and she is, so it's a pleasure to meet all of you and to discuss Ukrainian culture and to hear what you have to say about Ukrainian culture and the various entities that you are working with. It's a pleasure to introduce Chryzanta Hentisz, who is the director of the Ukrainian Museum in New York. And in the time of COVID, it seems that it's a very interesting and dynamic time for the Ukrainian Museum. So Chryzanta Hentisz basically is an attorney, and she was she is a practicing attorney with a long history in Ukrainian culture. And after meeting artists in Ukraine working in various media, such as painting, ceramics, woodworking, and sculpture, she opened the Chryzanta Gallery in New York City to showcase their works. She expressed her love of Ukrainian theater by helping to promote the Les Kurbas Theater from Lviv in several topics, tours in cities such as New York, Boston, Detroit, and Washington, D.C. Her interest in dance led to her work with the Sizzle Ukrainian Dance Ensemble, helping to organize performances in venues such as the Lincoln Center, the New York University, and the Danny Kaye Playhouse. While the Chryzanta Gallery gave way to her career as an attorney, she joined the Board of Trustees of the Ukrainian Museum in 2012 to support the laudatory mission of acquiring, preserving, and exhibiting, and support of its laudatory mission of acquiring, preserving, and exhibiting the interpreting articles of artistic and historic significance to the cultural heritage of Ukrainians. She became president of the board in 2017. So please, Chryzanta.
Okay, дуже дякую, Vera. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting the Ukrainian Museum to participate in this significant event. For those of us who are not familiar with the museum, allow me to provide a short overview of the museum's history and mission. The Ukrainian Museum was founded in 1976 by the Ukrainian National Women's League of America, or we call them Soyuz Ukrainok America, or SUA. The history of the museum stems from the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago, where SUA organized and funded a folk art exhibition in the Ukrainian pavilion. The objects exhibited there formed the foundation of the present museum and provided an impetus to its creation. Originally housed in a small space in New York City on 2nd Avenue, thanks to generous donations, principally from the Ukrainian community, the museum moved to its present location 15 years ago. As Vera mentioned, it's the museum's mission to acquire, preserve, exhibit, and interpret articles of artistic and historic value related to Ukrainian life and culture, to promote all aspects of Ukrainian culture and to educate the public about Ukraine. The museum's singular collection of folk art, fine art, and extensive compendium of archival materials make it one of the most unique and dynamic museums in New York City, with broad appeal for diverse audiences. Each year, the museum organizes several exhibitions, publishes accompanying bilingual catalogs, and conducts a wide range of public programming, including gallery talks, lectures, conferences, symposiums, concerts, and book presentations, as well as workshops in traditional Ukrainian folk arts, such as embroidery, decorating pisanki, Easter and Christmas holiday baking, and making traditional Christmas tree ornaments. The museum also presents a program of documentary and feature films, which expand on exhibition themes, relate to current events, or visually articulate Ukrainian culture. The museum frequently collaborates with other museums, educational institutions, and cultural centers. For example, as we've often done in the past, for the recent exhibition Kola, or Full Circle, which commemorated Ukraine's struggle for independence in 1917 to 21, we collaborated with 30 museums and institutions in Ukraine, Switzerland, Bulgaria, and the United States. And this is not the first time we have had such collaborations. We have had this at least 4 or 5 times previously, particularly the Mazepa exhibition in which we cooperated, particularly with museums in Sweden. So we do have a history of collaborating with other organizations, and we hope to continue to do so. Now, the pandemic presented the museum with new challenges, but paradoxically, it's been a blessing in some respects. The museum closed in March, and since then, we've been using social media to a greater extent and are now reaching audiences far from the New York metropolitan area. For example, in some recent online workshops, we had participants from Argentina, Norway, and Canada. Those participants particularly asked us to continue the Zoom workshops, even after in-person workshops resume at the museum, so that they can participate. So while the experience of visiting the museum and participating in events in person can't be replicated, the fact that we can now reach a larger audience is a plus. The social media has also been successful in online concert programming. Our recent virtual fundraiser with performances by various musical artists resulted in many generous donations. As you know, and I'm sure the other participants in this panel are aware, with all cultural institutions, funding is one of our greatest challenges, especially now with so many worthy Ukrainian causes all looking to the same donors. It becomes more and more difficult to support the museum's activities. We operate with a very small but dedicated and heroic staff who expend countless hours and work miracles to maintain the high level of excellence, which is demonstrated in the museum's exhibitions, publications, and activities. In its 44 years of operation, the museum has developed, matured, and become known as a preeminent Ukrainian cultural institution. Such recognition carries with it great responsibility, but also tremendous possibilities and incredible opportunities. With the wisdom gained from years of invaluable experience and the accomplishments of the past, and with the steadfast support of its members and friends, the Ukrainian Museum looks forward to building on its success and meeting the challenges of the future. And now, if I may have a second for a public announcement, we are talking about social media, this Saturday we're having a virtual Christmas concert, or Kolyada, with many nice performers, which can be viewed on Facebook, Zoom, and the museum's YouTube channel. If you're interested, and I hope you are, please join us. You can find all information on the Ukrainian Museum website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chryzanta. That was very interesting. I've been to the museum many nights. So the next speaker is Iryna Prokofieva. And Iryna, I'm sorry, Yuliya Fed. It was supposed to be the next one. Yuliya Fed is the executive director of the Ukrainian Cultural Fund. She studied in Germany and has a degree in international law. After returning to Ukraine, Yulia worked with foreign organizations as a cultural manager. She was engaged in social projects at the German Polish Ukrainian Society and worked on a project basis at the Ukrainian Center for Cultural Studies, was a consultant for the German International Cooperation Agency, GIZ, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, and Creative Europe Desk. So let us welcome Yuliya Fed. Please, Yulia.
Yeah, thank you. Good day to everybody. It's a big pleasure to be today with you. I want to talk more about the cultural sphere of Ukraine and the role of Ukrainian Cultural Foundation in it. So as you know, the cultural sphere of Ukraine is quite fragmented, both geographically and in terms of meaning. And the main task of the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation as a state institution established in 2017 is to form a single value and economic context for all legal entities working in the culture sphere. Ukrainian Cultural Foundation is a part of the ecosystem of the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy in Ukraine. We exist already 3 years and we supported over 1,000 projects in Ukraine and without Ukraine, because we support also international cooperation projects. And for us, it's important to invest into the Ukrainian culture and to develop it in the modern conditions. And we know that it's impossible without the partnerships within cultural organization, but also between cultural operators and business, between cultural operators and other social spheres, and also between the culture institution of different countries, because we want also to promote Ukrainian culture abroad. So in Ukrainian Cultural Fund, we have 12 different programs where the institution, it doesn't matter, or it's a governmental institution or local authorities or NGOs, small and medium enterprises, they can receive some state funding for their cultural projects. And we support all sectors of culture, art, and creative industries. And especially now in the times of lockdown and COVID-19, we saw the new challenges in the culture sphere of Ukraine, as all countries: digitalization, isolation, catastrophic drop in culture income, the social protection of cultural workers. And Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, together with the Ukrainian government, implemented an emergency program to support the culture institution in Ukraine. And it was not only the project support, but also the institutional support. So now we are interested in development of online platform for Ukrainian culture institution in order to promote the projects supported by Ukrainian Culture Fund. And also a platform will be like educational hub for the institution in order to get some consultation, trainings, webinars, to find some partners, because it would be like a big database in Ukrainian and in English about the culture organization, creative industries and arts institution working in Ukraine. And when you are interested to find a partner in Ukraine and to make collaboration in one of the art sector, you can go on this platform. It would be called like Cultural Space, and to find the partners in Ukraine. Also, it would be a platform for financial support of the culture institution in Ukraine. We want to make some virtual places where the Ukrainian culture operation can meet the businesses, can meet the philanthropic and mecenates in order to find some financing for their projects, because we are not interested in one-day project. We are interested in the long-scale projects in the culture sphere of Ukraine. And the Ukraine Culture Foundation is not only about the funding, not only about the money. We are also a big institution that works as a consulting agency, educational center, analytics center, because we have a huge analytical department in order to make the ecosystem of Ukrainian culture more visible for the Ministry of Finance, for the citizens of Ukraine, to promote Ukrainian culture, to promote Ukrainian artists, because we are keen that we have more to show, and we want also to get the dialogue between different Ukrainian governmental institutions and local authorities, and to make culture more popular, and to improve more investments into the culture sphere of Ukraine. So during the last 3 years, we supported over 1,000 projects, and most of them, they are innovative cultural products. There are some projects, for example, like to support the cooperation between cultural operators and travel agencies, like a program Culture Tourism Regions, or the program Innovative Cultural Projects. And I want also to show you some examples in order to better understand which projects we support. For example, it's a project, A Pocket Country. It's an AR application of cultural heritage. Or History of Ukraine in 10 Minutes. It's an animated film, briefly represents the history of Ukraine. Or Magic World Ukraine, it's like a mobile application with animated games and automated reality about Ukrainian mythology. Or Walk Like You, it's an interactive city guide. So it's a different kind of projects we support, and we have on our webpage, UCF in UA, a bit archive, also in English, about the projects within Ukraine we supported. So you can go online on our webpage, and also you can see the projects we supported on our online stand during this event. So I just invite you to go through it, to get acquainted with the Ukrainian Culture Institution, and to make the cooperation. And we as Ukrainian Culture Fund are open to support you financially, informationally, and also with some analytical data about what is happening now on Ukrainian cultural landscape. So I just introduced you to the Ukrainian Culture Fund, to our possibilities, and we are also open to support you and to advise you here in Ukraine, in Kyiv.
In a webinar.
So
our third speaker is Iryna Prokofieva. She has worked in European programs for the culture sector and creative industries of Ukraine and the Eastern Partnership countries, in particular the Cultural Bridge EU Eastern Partnership Culture and Creativity Program, Common Space for Cultural and Creative Industries. Having worked in the British Council in Ukraine, she coordinated the research project, Status and Promotion of Equal Opportunities for Women and Men in the Cultural Life. She graduated from the Kharkiv International University of Economics in Organization Management and the University of Economics and Law, KROK, which means STEP, in Project Management. In 2017, she was included in the New Europe 100 Challenger ranking as one of the 100 leading change makers in Europe, according to Res Publica, Google, Visegrad Fund, and the Financial Times. Member of the Kyiv office of the Global Community, WEF, Global Shapers, an alumna of the International Youth Organization, AIESEC.
We'll have a short speech telling you a little bit more about the Ukrainian institution which I represent here today, and also a bit about the role of culture and cultural diplomacy in times of Russian propaganda and hybrid war, and why culture and cultural diplomacy matters in that situation. So let's start from brief information about the Ukrainian Institute. If you are from the United States, you may have heard about the Ukrainian Institute in America, in the United States. This is our partnering organization, and we have almost the same name, but we are the different. Another one, Ukrainian Institute, based in Kyiv, created in created in 2017, and affiliated to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. We only started working in August 2018 with only a team of 5 people, and have grown up to a team of 45 people. And our mission is to strengthen international agency of Ukraine through advancement of cultural relations with other countries. And I must say that cultural diplomacy as a strategic policy is a relatively new practice in Ukraine. And of course, since 1991, a lot of different individuals and organizations, including Ukrainian missions and Ukrainian diaspora, have done a lot to strengthen the image of Ukraine internationally, and have implemented a lot of different initiatives. For example, establishing Ukrainian Museum in New York, and establishing Ukrainian Institute in America, which is I just mentioned. But only after Maidan, after 2014, Ukrainian government started creating public institutions which aim to develop culture and cultural diplomacy. After 2015, as you already know, Ukrainian Cultural Fund was created, represented by Yulia today, as well as Ukrainian Book Institute, and also the Ukrainian Institute, which I represent today. I must say that during this a little bit more than 2 years of our operations, we have already implemented more than 160 projects of cultural diplomacy in 12 countries, including several projects in United States as well. But at the moment, we are mostly operating in several European countries, and have our office only in Kyiv at the moment, but we really hope that in several years we will be able to have branches in physical branches in different countries. And talking about the role of culture and cultural diplomacy, I must say that unfortunately, Ukrainian image of Ukraine is a little bit fragmented, and has been fragmented due to some obvious historical reasons, and due to the amount of propaganda which we see from Russian side. And Ukraine is still some kind of a blind spot on the map of Europe for many European citizens. And current struggle against Russian aggression and negative news about Ukraine amplified by Russian propaganda and misinformation, they narrowed mainstream understanding of Ukraine to a set of cliches and prejudices. And in this situation, when we have the hybrid war and we have a lot of negative background in media, and also so-called Ukraine fatigue, which we also sometimes see, we have to create some alternative narrative about Ukraine, and culture in general and cultural diplomacy specifically can create this alternative narrative about Ukraine, and is generated by people of Ukraine, in our case by artists, by musicians, by filmmakers, by writers and other representatives of culture. And this narrative, it's not necessarily positive or optimistic in all the cases, but at the same time it's sincere, it's thoughtful, it's emotional, and it's also inclusive and trustworthy. So that's why we are trying to do our best to develop the cultural diplomacy, to support and develop cultural sphere of Ukraine in these difficult and complicated times. Of course, cultural diplomacy for Ukraine is very much an effort to decolonize language, historical narratives, media policies, academic research, and cultural perception of Ukraine in general. And it's a long way, but I think, and Ukrainian Institute thinks, that it has to be accomplished, and that's what we are trying to do from our side as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iryna. You certainly explained the various issues that are attacking Ukraine. All right, so Piano, to all panelists, thank you very much for the interesting panels. And from Harvey to all panelists, I would be interested in filmmaking funding to make English-speaking films in Ukraine. Ukraine Movie Maker at Gmail. So to all panelists, maybe you would like to respond to him. Anybody? Yuliya Fed, you?
Yes, from the side of Ukrainian Culture Foundation, we have the program Audiovisual Art, where we support the movies and TV programs, radio programs, and also alternative platforms like YouTube or video channels. And so if you have the partners in Ukraine, you can apply for funding by Ukrainian Culture Foundation, because we can only support partnerships between the American institution and the Ukrainian institution. So only in the collaboration you can apply for funding. And we have now open calls till the 14th of January. So 1 month left for the applications. All applications are online on our webpage. So you just go online, you register on the webpage of Ukrainian Culture Foundation, and you can apply until the 14th of January. Then the results will be in March. So since April till the end of the year, you can plan your project with the support by Ukrainian Culture Foundation. And you can see also on your private cabinet, online cabinet, which marks you will get from the experts, and if you get funding or not. Also everything so is going online, so it's easy and usable on the web page. We have also some online courses how to apply for funding, but yes, we as Ukrainian Culture Fund support it. Also, we have a film agency. It's an extra institution under the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy, and the film agency is supporting only movies and also co-productions. So you can apply also by the Film Agency of Ukraine, but also with Ukrainian production companies. So there are like 2 institutions supporting movies in Ukraine.
All right, thank you.
If you don't mind, I may also add from our side, because we also have a program devoted to support the film industry. If we have state film agency which supports the development and creation of movies. We have Ukrainian Cultural Fund which supports a variety of film activities. Yulia has just mentioned, and in the Ukrainian Institute we have a program called Promotion, which aim is to support the international promotion of Ukrainian films on their early stages of development. So we have an open call for Ukrainian productions, for Ukrainian producers and production companies, which apply to get promotional costs for international promotion of their specific movie, which is still in progress of development. And we support their promotion internationally, including their promotion during international film festivals. But we also cooperate with international festivals such as Cannes Film Festivals or Arras Film Festivals, Biennale in Austria, and different film festivals in different countries, where we also organize representation of Ukrainian producers, Ukrainian filmmakers, and promotion of Ukrainian movies, as well as ensuring the participation of inclusion of Ukrainian movies into the programs of international film festivals. That's what we do from our side.
Okay. There's a question about Ukraine. Culturally, Ukraine is much like a large university campus, safe, fun, exciting, etc., excluding the conflict zone and barriers to business. So I promote the universities and share that the cities are the same as the university culture. I'm open to discuss and help you create this perception. To all panelists and attendees, from Peter to all panelists, from audience to Iryna and Yulia, what distinguishes your two organizations? Another question, does the Ukrainian side have any cultural initiatives aimed at Crimea and the other occupied territories? So for all panelists.
I can start and Yulia will continue. If to simplify a lot, then the distinguish between our two institutions is the following. Ukrainian Cultural Foundation is investing into development of Ukrainian culture inside the country and cultural projects and funds them to be implemented. And our mission is to influence on people's perception of Ukraine internationally as a part of foreign policy, international foreign policy of Ukraine through the cultural diplomacy. So we do not operate and we do not fund projects in Ukraine, but we rather build long-term cultural connections between Ukraine and other countries and implement our activities internationally, but not in Ukraine, trying to form a better understanding of Ukraine through culture. So if to simplify. Maybe Yulia will add.
Yes, and I just want to add, in the best case scenarios, the projects created by the support of Ukrainian Cultural Fund can be exported abroad thanks to the help of Ukrainian institutes. So it's like internal cultural policies are made by Ukrainian Cultural Fund and cultural diplomacy is made by Ukrainian institutes. So it's how it works in Ukraine.
Just a question, do your organizations cooperate with each other on projects?
Yes, we cooperate and there are some projects already which were created by our support and presented abroad by support of Ukrainian Institute. Like Chernobyl Door, for example, and also other projects. So yes, we cooperate and we have also meetings, and also the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy now signed a memorandum with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I hope then our collaboration will be also not on the level of our institution, but also on the governmental level between the two ministries, because it was also always a question, how do we cooperate and how do the ecosystem of cultural policies works inside the countries and outside the countries. So I hope that thanks to us and Ukrainian Institute, it will be also clear for international partners and national organizations inside the countries. So we are trying the best to make the ecosystem of Ukrainian culture and cultural diplomacy working great inside the country and outside the country. It's our mission, actually.
All right. Thank
Can I,
you. Go ahead.
I was going to ask another question. At the Ukrainian Museum, we've been struggling now. We have a strategic planning committee with the question of what is the role of Ukrainian organizations outside of Ukraine, in the United States. Ukrainian Museum was funded in order to show Ukrainian culture, history, while Ukraine was not free. Now that Ukraine is a free country and has its own initiatives, as you so nicely put it, how do you see the role of the institutions such as the museum now going forward?
Yeah, I think it's the question for Iryna. It's mostly about the cultural diplomacy.
Yeah, I can try to answer this question. Of course, any kind of cultural institutions working with Ukrainian culture and art internationally are our main partners in every country. For example, in United States, we only had several projects to art residencies with local United States art institutions, but also, you know, that we cooperated and co-organized the contemporary Ukrainian contemporary music festival this year. Actually, when I was attending in New York, and I was happy to meet you in person. And as far as I know, you are not only the partner in this year project, but you will also join as a partner of this project next year. So this is also an example when we cooperate with local institutions which are already established in each specific country. And it's the same for not only for United States, but also for any kind of countries we tried to operate in. For example, it's also local museums, for example, in Austria or in France, not only Ukrainian museums, of course, but also local French, German, Austrian, Polish museums. And we always try to build these two-way projects to not to just showcase something on behalf of Ukraine, but rather to co-create and make some joint efforts and establish this longer-term cooperation. And Ukrainian organizations internationally are always our partners in that process. For example, when we had huge project of cultural year of Ukrainian cultural year in Austria last year in 2019, Ukrainian diaspora and Ukrainian institutions in Austria were our strongest support in this process, because they also cooperated with us in several projects and helped us to establish connections with local Austrian organizations and institutions, because they are very well integrated into the local communities and cultural communities.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And now from Peter to all of the panelists. From Tamara Denisenko, does the language issue affect the level of cultural development in Ukraine and in the broader world cultural communities? So it's for everyone.
Yes, so as for the Ukrainian Culture Foundation, for us, one of the priority is to support the Ukrainian cultural content, so Ukrainian speaking, a cultural product and cultural content. And that's why all projects we supported is aiming to promote the Ukrainian language within Ukraine and abroad too. And also to support the minorities in Ukraine. And for example, we have a lot of projects to support the Crimean Tatarian language and culture. Like this year, we supported over 30 different projects aiming on the spread and promotion of Crimean Tatars and Crimean culture. Yes, so for us, language is the main issue, because we want that on the TVs, movies, Ukrainian books, Ukrainian music, Ukrainian language speaking product will be spread within Ukraine and also, I hope, abroad. And in the perfect world, we want to make Ukrainian language also interesting for our foreign partners to be learned abroad. And we saw how that already some foreign cultural operators are interested in learning Ukrainian as a foreign language. And I hope that the high quality Ukrainian cultural content will make it more interesting for our partners like to learn Ukrainian. It's from the Ukraine Cultural Foundation perspective, but I think Iryna can talk more about this.
I would like to add just a few words as well, because promoting and supporting the visibility of Ukrainian language as a separate language internationally is one of our objectives. For example, we have the program of creation of Ukrainian audio guides in Ukrainian language in the biggest world museums. We already have launched 7 or 8 of them during these 2 years in Austria, in Poland, and our embassies are supporting this program as well, launching similar projects in their countries all over the world. So in this way, we are trying to show that Ukrainian language is a separate language. It is not Russian language, and Ukrainian is a very important part of our Ukrainian political nation at the moment. But at the same time, we also work with Crimean Tatars theme as well, and we are trying to cooperate now with Ukrainian Cultural Fund on that. Maybe we will prepare some joint initiatives, but we also use the elements of Crimean culture in our projects to show as well that Crimea is part of Ukraine and it's part of our culture as well. So we integrate this culture and this language into our projects and activities, and already preparing one pretty big project on this topic for the next year.
All right.
And I'd just like to say that at the Ukrainian Museum, we do everything bilingually. All of our catalogs are printed bilingually. Our programs, the people come into the museum, everything is bilingual. We have also had special exhibitions addressing Crimea, the Crimean situation. So we emphasize that Crimea is part of Ukraine and it's part of the Ukrainian culture that we're promoting. A lot of our events, though, do emphasize the Ukrainian language. For example, the upcoming event, we have 2 groups performing from Ukraine, the KU Chamber Choir and the Kurbasi from Lviv. So we do promote a lot of Ukrainian language groups, and also we try to promote groups from Ukraine to show that the culture is still alive. But we do have to operate bilingually because we also want to show the American audience what Ukrainian culture is like, and not just limit ourselves to the diaspora Ukrainians who speak the language.
Yes. All right. So from Harvey to all panelists, and from John to all panelists, what are your goals in 2021? And the Ukraine Museum should host a YouTube, Instagram, social media content makers event. This could really present the museum well. I've visited Ukrainian museums, very rich in culture with beautiful and interesting items. So more virtual sharing, especially with COVID, could be great. Apps really help with language, but it's much better to just go to cafes and chat. Yes, thank you. Well, I really appreciate this wonderful and very interesting and dynamic panel. All of the speakers were fantastic. So thank you very much for participating in this very interesting panel and exciting information. Thank you so much.